Live from the mist-enshrouded mountaintop fortress that is X and Y Communications headquarters, you're listening to the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. And now, here's your host, Scott McKay.
How's it going, gentlemen? Welcome to yet another episode of the world-famous Mountaintop Podcast. I am your host, Scott McKay, at Scott McKay on Twitter, on YouTube, just about every different platform out there, with the exception of what we're going to talk about today, which is Instagram, where I'm at Real Scott McKay. And indeed, speaking of Instagram, you know, we've never really done a deep dive on much of social media here on this show, although we talk about it, it seems like constantly. We've never really done a show about Instagram in particular, and that's all going to change right here, right now with this episode, thanks to my good friend, my longtime friend, and returning guest, none other than fellow dating and relationship strategist, Robbie Kramer. Robbie, how you doing, man?
Hey, Scott. Good to be back.
Yeah, indeed it is. You're a smart guy. You and I think alike on a lot of things. One thing I am not is a huge Instagram user. Maybe that's because I got a great face for podcasting. Who knows? But I'm assuming since you brought this topic up that you've made good use of Instagram yourself, yeah?
Well, you know, like most social media, I was not an early adopter. I tend to gravitate towards things in the real world, but Instagram has become like such a phenomenon when it comes to dating that if you're not using it, and I totally understand guys that have resistance to it. I was one of those guys too back in the day. But if you're not using it and you're a single guy trying to, you know, date up, right? Date more attractive women and improve your social life, your dating life, it's really, really hard to compete. So I think it's just so important in the modern day kind of tool stack for a single guy. And if you're going to do it, you might as well do it right.
You know, your mouth is writing a check that I hope your content can cash, because a lot of guys are already thinking, man, I get on Instagram and I see these models, you know, these sorority chicks, these bikini ladies, if you will, and they've got tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of followers. And I mean, how do I compete with other guys trying to get their attention? I mean, is that what we're talking about here? Going on Instagram and talking to Instagram models? Or is what you're talking about not quite as lofty a goal? I mean, can you do other things other than try to hit on Instagram models who already have a bunch of guys? I mean, let's tell it the way it is. Hundreds of thousands of desperate guys who are Mr. Nice Guy trying to hit on them all the time. What is the strategy here?
Right. So if you want to try to be competitive with those, you know, influencers with hundreds of thousands of followers and that sort of thing, and you're new to the platform, I mean, that's not feasible.
All some of these women have to do is influence you to look at their boobies, and that's enough to get hundreds of thousands. So I don't know about influencer, but I digress. Go ahead.
Yeah, influencer is probably giving them too much credit. But no, that's not what I'm talking about. I mean, obviously, if that's a lofty goal in the future and you put a ton of work into it, is that possible? Sure. But I'm just talking about the average guy who's trying to, you know, even meet women out in the day, like, you know, on a sidewalk or at a coffee shop, or even a guy who's just using Tinder, online dating. Like, Instagram is kind of the modern day way that we show our status. And if she's, if she's trying to size you up versus another guy and you don't have Instagram, then it's just very difficult to kind of stay top of mind. It's very difficult for her to judge you. She might pass you over for other guys. So even if you just have literally 9 photos that, you know, fill up the page, even 6, even 3, doesn't really matter your follower count so much. That is going to be, you know, significantly better than not having one. And what you want to do in terms of like how you use Instagram, I mean, I can get into like all the way up to what you were talking about, which is, you know, trying to actually DM girls and try to meet women on Instagram. That's not really what I recommend. I more recommend using Instagram as a tool, mostly as like a messaging platform, because most beautiful single girls are using Instagram as their primary means of messaging people. They're like using that well over texting these days. So if you're trying to stay, you know, within her sort of radar over text, you're probably going to lose out to the guys that are messaging her through Instagram. And I can kind of go more into that as well. But, you know, there's different use cases. There's kind of like how to use it to build your social circle, how to use it if you're just trying to, you know, get more dates and, you know, kind of fill up your dance card. So we can kind of take these things individual if you want to.
Yeah, man. You have rolled out a whole lot of ideas there, and man, you've rolled out a whole lot of ideas there, and I want to get to all of them. I mean, after all, this is the show about Instagram. The episode is on that very topic, so why not? For starters, you kind of redirected this conversation very effectively. First of all, to demonstrating to us as men, not that it's all about the Instagram models and the influencers, if you want to call them that, per se, but it all starts with your own profile on Instagram, which, dare I say, is an afterthought for a lot of guys. They're thinking, well, I'm not here to show off who I am. I'm here to meet all these women who are showing off. But the whole idea of the social media highlight reel has, just exploded. Everybody wants to put their best foot forward. Everyone wants to pretend they're living this charmed life like a rock star. And if you put your 9 worst photos up there, obviously your highlight reel isn't going to be all that amazing to anybody. But if you have 9 well-placed photographs in your Instagram portfolio, if you will, as a guy, then all of a sudden you have almost a modern day social business card to hand to women. Say, okay, Here's my Insta, and she'll, I guess at the very least, get a good picture of whether she's going to connect with you, whether you have a lot in common, whether you're going to get along, whether or not you think alike, et cetera, et cetera. And at best, she's going to say, wow, this guy is really amazing. I want to get in on his reality because his is at least as good as mine. Am I onto something?
Totally. Yeah, and I think the best place to start is for the guys who are kind of feeling a bit, what's the word?
Less attractive than a supermodel?
No, sorry. The guys who are feeling resistance to using Instagram, right? Because
same difference.
Well, so I think anytime, and you talked about this earlier, I forgot the term you used, but essentially the modern day social media is killing our masculinity because it's diverting our attention. I forgot the words you used, but that was so eloquently put. If you want to repeat that.
We were talking offhand before we hit record on this on, I guess, a tangentially related topic. And what I said in that context was one of the biggest threats to our masculinity is the onslaught of headlines in social media that
exactly
distracts us and gets us to worry about things we don't even care about and think other things than what matters are important when they're really not, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, we get dragged along by the prevailing narrative instead of having purpose and direction that's in line with our own belief system when we allow ourselves to get sucked in like that. Yeah.
Right. And that's what I don't want for people. I don't want you guys spending a ton of time on Instagram, going through the discovery, looking at a bunch of useless content and, dumbing yourself down. I want you guys to be only using it to kind of highlight your authentic, cool life in an effort to attract the right women, not as a thing that's going to sap away your time and make you feel shitty. I mean, when I spend a lot of time on Instagram, I feel like shit. And,
you try political Twitter.
Oh, God. I'm not even on Twitter for that reason.
You'll be in a fetal position at the foot of your bed, sucking your thumb after about 10 minutes of that. Trust me.
Dude, yeah. I guess that's why I've stayed away. I mean, I see that happening. It's like you get so sucked in. But for the guy who's having resistance to Instagram, I'm not talking about, you don't even need 9 photos. You can literally have 3 photos, right? And these photos, if you're already using online dating, you already have those photos, right? If you don't have 3 decent photos and you're using online dating, I mean, what the hell are you doing, right?
Yeah,
and most guys out there,
yeah,
most guys out there at least have a Tinder profile, right? So we all need photos, right? We all need a few decent photos for content or for online dating, and those same photos can be repurposed for Instagram. But the main thing about Instagram, it's not even about that profile. It's not about your feed. What's happening is we're seeing a big shift on social media away from this sort of look at me, pretending to be so cool, pretending to be so rich. There's so much content of this narcissistic showing off sort of stuff to the point they have studios set up where you can go to a lot, get on a private jet that's parked, that's not going to fly anywhere, and just take Instagram photos to impress your friends. That's how much social media has kind of degraded, I guess, the human condition in that regard. So no one's really that impressed anymore with this flaunty content. What people do want is they want authenticity. They want to see people just posting, stories of their everyday life, not even necessarily doing cool stuff, but just showing that, they're interesting, they're funny, they're witty. Like, you could literally have a photo of you like lying on a park bench making fun of the fact that like you actually took some time away from your work. If you're like a guy who's always working, and there's a way to make the mundane funny and interesting. And the women that are interested in you are going to resonate with your content, and you're going to see the patterns in the way in which they behave with your content. And I'm just talking about posting stories, like 1 or 2 stories a day. It could be the thing you cooked for dinner. It could be you walking in the park. It could be a cool shot that you snap on your phone and you make a little witty comment about that. And the beauty of doing that is the women who like you are going to make it painfully obvious that they like you. You're going to see the patterns and how they react to your stories. Do they comment? Do they like? And that's how you tell like who's interested in you. And if you're doing that across the board, and you've got, the women that you meet on Tinder, the women that you meet in real life, the women you meet, whatever at the bar through your social circle, it's going to be pretty easy to know which ones you should ask out on a date and which ones you shouldn't waste your time. Right. And like I said earlier, if you're not doing this, then she's not even going to probably remember you versus the other guys that she's talking to. Because if she's a beautiful girl, like there's a lot of competition there. And if you're constantly popping up in her Instagram feed, she's going to get reminded of you. It's the same reason why they put like 7 movie billboards on the same street, one after the other. It's like that rule of 7 in marketing, right? You got to say no to something 7 times in a row before you say yes. So if you show up in her feed over and over and over, that's actually going to build attraction for you. And you're not messaging her. You're not going out of your way to show interest. You're just posting about what you're normally doing in a way that's a bit funny and creative. And obviously this is a skill. You're not going to get really good at this overnight. Just like humor, like we talked about on the other episode, this takes some skill to find the humor in what you're doing and to create that witty post, or to even repurpose memes. Like there's nothing wrong with finding other content and repurposing those on your stories. But if you do that, the kind of this world of interest and love from the women in your life already will kind of open up to you, and you'll be operating in a different sort of way than the standard get her number, text her, hope she responds, get her on a date. Like you can do all that over Instagram now and have a lot better odds of succeeding.
Yeah, just for the benefit of the guys listening, when you were talking about that quote unquote other show where we talked about humor, that was on your podcast relatively recently. Right. Great show. And go ahead and tell the guys where they can find your podcast, Robbie.
Yeah, that's episode 226 of the Inner Confidence podcast, and that's innerconfidence.com and all over all the different podcasting channels. Inner Confidence podcast.
Yeah, right. Apple Podcasts, even YouTube since it's video, right?
Yep.
But yeah, man, let's hear it for authenticity. Here's the thing about authenticity as I see it relative to trying to show off and pretend you're something you're not. What kind of women do you want to attract? Do you really want to attract women you get along with and who are like you and you may theoretically go figure like in real life? Or is it all just about how she looks in a bikini? And here's the hint. And these guys know this if they've listened to more than 2 or 3 episodes of this particular show. Why don't you find yourself a chick who looks hot in the bikini and you actually like and likes you back and gets along with you? You're not going to do that by pretending to be something you're not. And I love what you said about Instagram kind of acting, well, I'm going to paraphrase what you said, as a meta level Tinder profile, sort of. I mean, once you have a woman's attention on Tinder, which is all Tinder is going to do for you. Once you have her attention, please get off Tinder with her. Okay.
Yep.
The first kind of level past Tinder is, okay, here's a more expanded version of what I look like, what my lifestyle looks like, etc. And I think that's a brilliant strategy to give her your Instagram so that at least she feels like there's a context there that still feels like home, social media. She's going to be on it because she's attractive and female, and women love selfies and visuals. We know that. We don't hold it against them, but you're participating in that world with her in a way that she can relate to and understand. And then because she has more to go on and because it's authentic, she understands also that she's going to get along with you. And here's the hint. Here's almost like the golden secret for you guys out there. You and 200,000 other hungry chihuahuas, aka Mr. Nice Guys, out there can tell an Instagram model or an Ojos Locos waitress, how hot she is with the starry-eyed, heart-eyed emojis, none of you are going to get anywhere with her because there are 200,000 of you and you all look, act, and smell the same to that beautiful woman. You're all about her boobies. You're all about how good she looks. She's heard it 200,000 times. And if you blend in with 200,000 other people, here's the sobering reality, Robbie. It's about as good a chance you're going to get in there as if you bought one of 200,000 lottery tickets. It isn't going to happen. And you know what? Your chances are even worse because here it is. She's not even going to draw a winning number. All y'all lose. So how do you win? You win by doing exactly what you talked about. Being one of her. Being part of her tribe. Inviting her into your reality and her saying, hey, you know what? That's pretty cool. Meanwhile, Robbie, what are guys doing? They're running scared. First of all, they don't want to be vulnerable at all. Vulnerable to me is along the same lines as authentic. Too many guys in particular are like, well, if she finds out I'm really masculine, or if I lean conservative, or I actually believe in God or Allah or whatever it is I believe in, and I would prefer to have a diesel F-250 instead of a Tesla or a Toyota Prius, someone's going to yell at me. Someone's going to call me horrible names, and I'm afraid, I'm scared. That's Mr. Nice Guy BS. What happens is, if you wear your stripes proudly, the hot, sexy women are going to notice, wait, here's a guy who I could finally get along with. Here's a guy who I might be able to connect with. And I tell you what, the Willy Wonka golden ticket, Robbie, to getting a truly hot, sexy, beautiful girlfriend is being that one guy who looks beyond what she looks like and how sexy she is and reaches for more and gets to know what she's like, challenges whether she's going to be one of him or not, and goes for it. Those are the guys who end up with hot, sexy women, because it should be obvious by now that hot, sexy women aren't going to choose to be with a guy simply because he thought she was hot and sexy. So along with that is a lot of men who are assuming women get to make all the choices. Well, if you're on that same shallow playing field, right? I'm reminded of the saying, 100 yards wide and an inch deep. You know what I mean? If you go for a little bit more depth and you actually, I don't know, the best word I could come up with to describe it is demand more from these beautiful women. I don't want just a pretty face. I want a woman who votes like I do, wants to raise kids the way I do, thinks about money the same way I do, would go on the same kind of vacations I would. Then that's when you perk up those beautiful women and go, hey, here's a guy who's willing to offer more of what I want. And see, that's when you stop being a chaser, gentlemen, and you become a chooser as well. And you and a beautiful woman can choose each other. Boom.
Boom.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's so mind-boggling to me that there are so many dudes operating on this low status playing field of
There's no competition.
Dude, thinking that you can go on a hot girl's profile and say you're so sexy and that's going to work it's unfathomable to me that so many dudes do this day in and day out. It's like unbelievable. And I'm guessing most of those guys are not listening to this because, right, they're just resonating at such a low frequency and such a low idiotic level. It's just silly. But like that's the competition for most of these girls. And what they're not seeing a lot of are cool guys authentically sharing what's going on in their day-to-day life, who they've met, on some other form. Like you meet a girl on Tinder, for example, right? And then you get off the app as fast as possible. You get on Instagram. And if you just simply kind of like live your own life and be willing to be vulnerable and share about like what you're up to, if she likes you, she's going to let you know, right? Like, and if you don't have that Instagram and you're just trying to text, it's just so difficult. So like if you're not doing that, you're really operating with your hand tied behind your back. And then if you want to take this to the highest form, like the highest level is as you're kind of living your life and doing cool things, if you continually post that and you're continually showing that you're a high status guy that lives a high status life with other high status people, women are going to start, coming to you. Like when I started throwing parties and hosting events, and it just started with little dinner parties at my place, and then I consistently would do that and grew my circle of friends, and then I started hosting nights out at different venues. And then I started hosting like longer parties and put together some photo shoots and some even Playboy calendar shoots. I started posting that stuff on Instagram, and all of the girls, like even that had friend zoned me in the past, ex-girlfriends came out of the woodwork. They're like, dude, what are you doing? We want to participate. Well, I'm interested in you now. So, obviously there's that very high end level where you can take this. And if you're not, like, Instagram is online dating. Like if you're trying to online date without Instagram, like that's the biggest platform there is. You just can't do it. So hopefully I've inspired some people to get on there, because like I said, it's impossible without it.
But wait, there's more. You're just getting started. I'm just getting started. There's a lot to talk about here now. I remember years ago, Race the Priest, who you may know, actually got his start with a simple piece he wrote about how he was getting on MySpace. This is how far back it goes. And just announcing house parties on Wednesday for women.
We were doing those parties together, by the way, Race and I. We both lived in SD, and we were like wingmen galore.
Okay, so this is coming from the same roots. I'm just remembering what you guys have been doing for years.
Mm-hmm.
So let's go ahead and explain. What happened was, and correct me if I'm wrong here, you got to evaluate 2 or 3 dozen women at once in person, instead of rolling the proverbial dice online or on social media and hoping the first date would go well and that she didn't misrepresent herself and she looked as good as her pictures. When you had 20, 25 women or more coming to your place on Wednesday night, then all of a sudden you knew immediately what 25 or 30 women were like in person and whether you were attracted to them for real or not, without having to go on 25 or 30 individual dates. That's genius. So you're still doing that to this day.
I mean, that's how I built my entire dating life. That's how I found my wife, by that exact strategy.
So you and your wife are not still throwing these parties to bring other women into your reality. You've retired.
I've retired from that, but we do still throw the parties, and our clients come to them. We host them in different parts of the world every year.
Yeah.
Because we're social, we like to do it, and we like to we enjoy being in that energy where people are having fun and meeting other people. So we're very extroverted in that regard, I guess. But yeah, that strategy of going on a group date, you could say, where the deck is extremely rigged in your favor because the ratio is 3-to-1 women to men versus any nightclub, which is typically 3-to-1 men to women.
Yeah, and you look like the freaking man because you're the host.
Exactly. Yeah. Like when you host a party and a woman shows up and there's a bunch of other girls, she doesn't think, oh my God, this is a pussy fest, versus a sausage fest, right? Like when a girl shows up to a sausage fest, she's just going to be like, oh, I'm going to be treated like a piece of meat. This is going to be annoying. I'm just going to be fending off thirsty dudes all day. But when a woman shows up to, a vagina fest, I guess you want to call it, or whatever, she's not thinking like, oh, damn, there's not enough guys here for me. She's thinking, geez, the guys who were able to put this together must be pretty cool. And they want to like interact with those other women. They're obviously, their competitive juices start flowing too. And you can kind of create that competition anxiety, which is going to make them more attractive to you, but they're not going to instantly leave like, a lot of guys will do if they show up to a sausage fest. So it's, you have to go a layer deeper and, realize that women think a little bit differently than men when it comes to this sort of thing. So if you're consistently hosting those events and the ratio is in your favor, it's just a matter of time before you have the pick of the litter.
Yeah, you know what? The first thing that comes to mind is, even though the English language famously has more words in it than any other language on earth, much like there is no female equivalent of macho in the English language, even though there should be, there's no female equivalent for a sausage fest either. And there should be. I mean, what's up with that, right? First of all, not to be missed here, and we won't belabor it, you are also, like me, a married dating coach, and your wife is totally on board with it because I'm assuming it's the same reason my wife is. She feels chosen, and you two adore each other, so there's no threat that would cause her to be jealous.
Right.
Yeah, okay, perfect.
Yeah, and she loves what I do. From day one, she's been a huge advocate and helps guys, giving the female side of things, help them with their social media and whatnot. And, she's a model by craft. So she's, very much in tune with, what a lot of these guys are looking for. So
fantastic.
Yeah, she's a great sort of advocate and partner for me. And when we met, I was the biggest player out there. She already knew who I was before I knew who she was, which is obviously a huge benefit. But I didn't have the best reputation in her eyes because she considered me a fuckboy. She knew I was living in Kiev, Ukraine, and I had this big social circle, and I was hosting these Playboy events. And she was like, oh, yeah, that Robbie guy, he's just, he hooks up with all the girls. He's just a player. But that didn't, that's intriguing. That's mysterious. And then when she met me, she was like, oh, wow, okay, he's a player, but he's actually a really cool, down-to-earth, cool dude. And every girl, like if you look at romance novels, the script is basically the same. They meet a guy, the guy's a little bit broken, and he's, emotionally maybe unavailable, and they use him as a project, and they get the player to fall in love with her, right? It's like
enough about me. Anyway, I'm guessing, though, despite your popularity with other women, probably in large part because of your popularity with other women, once you decided to choose her, it actually, and perhaps ironically to a lot of men, even listening to this show, made her feel safer and more secure with you because you had options, but you chose her. I know that's what Emily would say.
Totally.
Yeah. There's truth to that.
There's so much truth to that because then they feel like, wow, I was chosen, which is obviously validating. But also when they feel chosen, they feel secure in the fact that, like, he made this choice. He picked me out of the best options, which is very high value, high status for him and also for me. So when you feel like a guy's settling for you, that's got to be a horrible feeling. Yeah.
The only thing worse than settling is being settled for. Boom.
Right.
Exactly true. And, the practicality of the matter there is if you're like me, we're dating 4 or 5 women at once. We have more waiting in the wings. We have a bullpen, not to pat ourselves on the back. Gentlemen, this is why we're here. We want you to be able to have that kind of power in your life too, for sure. But what happened was very shortly after I met Emily, I was thinking to myself, okay, which woman would I like to spend time with today? Well, it's Emily. That's on a Monday. Tuesday. Which woman would I like to spend time with? Well, that would be Emily. Wednesday, yep, Emily. Thursday, Emily. All of a sudden, you don't need the other ones anymore. And that's to the thrill and delight of the woman you've chosen. And 17 years later, here we are. We're still in our honeymoon phase. I still adore that little chick and vice versa. Yeah.
That's the best. Yeah. When you feel like you're in a position to choose the best possible person for you. I used to hear a bunch of stuff all the time from different people about, like, when or it should be easy when a relationship first starts. And I never really understood that until I experienced it with my wife, Maria, because, obviously there was a lot of, I was on my game and I made sure to make the right moves and whatnot, but the relationship quickly evolved and it didn't take me long to be like, all right, I've got the pick of the litter here in Kiev with so many gorgeous girls around.
Sounds like the pick of the litter is howling in the background even as we speak.
Oh, you can hear the those fire trucks going by.
Okay.
But
see, I have a hair trigger when it comes to this stuff because we have a house full of whippets today because we have 2 different families who are going on vacation. And, the whippets are all kind of in a cartel around here in San Antonio. They kind of hang together as a crew. And they're very high strung, very active, extremely quick animals. Mm-hmm. And so I'm thinking, since we have 5 whippets in the house somewhere lurking around, the howling is going to start on my side any second now while we're recording. So that's probably why I was extra tuned into that. But anyway, continue.
Yeah, I've got a couple of wolves lying here too, a Siberian Husky and a German Shepherd, but they're old and just chilling. But yeah, my point was just like being in a position where you can really choose and feel like you've chosen the best of the best is an amazing feeling. And prior to that, I was always kind of feeling a little bit like, I don't know, or maybe I'm settling, or maybe she's settling. And none of that is there for me anymore. It's one of those situations that just feels like it is like how it should feel when I thought about what a relationship should feel like.
And that is how it should be.
And yet, if you're listening to this as a guy, like that is when you have that feeling, that's when you should, leave the game behind, or that's when you should get married or whatever sort of lifestyle you want. You shouldn't do it for all the wrong reasons, which is I don't want to be lonely or, I'm tired of like this dating stuff. I just want to find a girl and be done with it. Like those are not the right reasons to choose a girl.
Indeed. Anyway, getting back to the main point here, Instagram. Yeah, let's go ahead and shift gears and talk about another dark corner of this whole Instagram rabbit hole, I guess. which hasn't come up yet, but which is kind of like the elephant in the room proverbially, because it is really obvious. Robbie, Instagram is like OnlyFans' kiddie pool nowadays. Let's face it. Okay.
It is.
I mean, it's one level below soft porn. And a lot of the women on there realize it. And they invite it. They love the attention from those 200,000 guys with the heart-eyed emojis.
Well, they found a way to monetize it.
And they found a way to monetize it. Absolutely, for sure. And yet, I think a lot of those same women are indeed oblivious. They may or may not be, but a lot of women certainly are oblivious, if not most of them, to the fact that they're not going to be attracted to any of these men who are chasing them and acting so needy and being Mr. Nice Guy who they're getting the attention from. It's as if they've planted these seeds in their garden to attract all the wrong men. And then what do those same women do? They complain about the men they're attracting. How do you break through all of that noise and present yourself? I'm talking objectively right here. I mean, we've talked about the idea and the psychology behind it, but how do you actually get through that noise as a guy on Instagram with a woman like this?
So you're talking about, well, if you're trying to like cold DM these girls and, slide into her DMs, as they say, and try to date them that way, like, good luck. That's just such a low value, sort of thing you can do with your time, right? So I'm not recommending
creepy,
that.
Actually.
Yeah, I mean, unless you already have like an enormous following, like if you've got hundreds of thousands of followers and you slide into a girl's DM, well, here's the other thing too. If you had a blue check up until about 3 weeks ago, that was a huge symbol of status, because the only way to get that, and it was revered on Instagram, the only way to get that was to actually be someone of status, to be either a celebrity. You could, I guess, pay for it, but it was like 10 to 15 grand and you didn't know if you're going to get it. Right. But now anyone can get the blue check if you pay $8 or whatever it is, or $20.
Yeah. Importantly, Meta has quietly gone the way of Twitter in basically pimping out their blue check mark. Yeah, that has happened.
I know so many guys who had like literally just spent, the 10, 15 grand to get the blue check, and now it's $20, which is like, it just goes to show you, like, that's why I hate social media for those exact reasons.
And the new blue check, at least on Twitter, is not having a blue check and refusing to pay for it.
Right.
And basically challenging Elon Musk to let your profile be copied far and wide and for you to be impersonated because, I'm so damn popular that's going to ruin your platform when everybody's pretending to be me, and then you'll give me my blue check back, buddy, for sure. I mean, that's basically the psychology of it all right now, at least as we're recording this on Twitter, is I am really influential and I beg you to not give me my blue check mark back. That's the new level of status. It's really crazy, and it's subject to change daily.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
This stuff changes, instantly. Like, instantly you had status on Instagram with that blue check, and you could message other, women that are in like these models and these Instagram influencers. If you had that blue check and you've got a bunch of followers and you've got a great profile and you message that girl, she's like, oh, wow, I'm going to open that one. And maybe I will go on a date with this guy, or maybe I will go to one of his parties. But now forget about it. Like, because you can buy fake followers. It's not that hard to hire a photographer and get some cool photos, right? Obviously take something, but there's a lot of guys that are willing to do that, right? There's a lot of noise out there. And what you're asking is cutting through that noise. Well, in my opinion, the best way to do that is to meet women in real life, and then obviously use Instagram as simply a way to stay top of mind and a way to message them, because then they're constantly inundated with your content. And if, like I said earlier, if they like you, they're going to let you know on there. Yeah,
I was kind of going to guess that you were going to talk about what happens in real life spilling over into Instagram instead of vice versa. In other words, going from the outside in instead of the inside out. Unless, of course, you're one of the few and the proud who has hundreds of thousands of followers on Instagram. You would be particularly rare as a male heterosexual human being who's like that on Instagram. But anyway, this really is that meta level stepping stone to go from the virtual world, or even from a quick chance meeting in the real world, to giving her at least a bit deeper of a glimpse into who you are, and then taking it from there, hopefully back to the real world, right?
Yeah, just to give like a very sort of applicable example, this is what I'm kind of coaching guys on the daily to do. It's like, have the courage to approach a woman in real life. You see her walking down the sidewalk, You run up to her, you give her a little elevator pitch. Hey, not to be that creepy guy that hits on you on the sidewalk, but hey, got to be that guy. Listen, you're in a rush. I'm in a rush. Got to meet some buddies for coffee. Give me your number. If you don't like me, give me a fake one. As she's putting the number in your phone, you're like, actually, I don't even know why I asked for your number. I'm always on Instagram. Let me put my name in your phone. So you grab her phone, you put your Instagram in, and you follow yourself, because that way now she's going to see your message versus going into her, general category. And then you message her something witty and funny. And then rather than asking her on a date, right, you post content about the weekly events that you're throwing, the little house parties you're doing. You put that stuff out there on Instagram. If she likes you, she's going to see that over and over, right? If she's giving you love and liking your photos, hey, maybe ask her on a date, but maybe you don't. Maybe you just invite her to the next party. Now she shows up and she's, dealing with the ratio that's in your favor, not hers. You've got status, you've got pre-selection. She's in. And if, by the way, she decides to sleep with you and you want to keep things casual, she's the one that kind of like made that decision. So it's a lot easier to not have to deal with the like, oh, you took me on 4 dates and we had sex, but now you're like a player and, I feel tricked. Versus if she comes to the party and she sees that tons of women are giving you attention and love, well, now she's got to compete with those girls. And she also knows that like, if you guys do hook up, you're just the type of guy that like is having fun in his life, and that's okay. And maybe she wants that right now. So like that is, in my opinion, the most highest leverage way that you could use social media, plus the strategy of, building a social circle and kind of doing these group dates that you alluded to earlier. Kind of, it's like the difference between farming versus hunting, I like to say. Like
the sales analogy. Very good.
Right.
Yeah. As Mac Miller once famously said, it ain't 2009 no more. Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's funny. Back when David D'Angelo was relatively new, he was advocating not asking for women's numbers and asking for their email instead. Nowadays, it's still don't ask them for their number, not because we're not going to call them, because who hangs on the phone anymore, right?
Right.
And nowadays, not even because you're going to text them instead. It's just you might as well move straight to Instagram. Not a bad strategy at all. You use the dreaded D word in there too, speaking of 2009 and earlier. Who even knows what dating is anymore anyway? I just did a master class on this, and I was avoiding the word dating at all. As a matter of fact, the first line in the marketing was, is dating dead? People don't use the phrase hookup culture even anymore. So it's not like the pendulum swung the other way to being completely casual. It's just nobody knows how men and women are getting together anymore. In a way, it's almost easier because you just meet someone, you like each other, and life happens. But
totally. I'm so glad you brought the D word up, because that's been coming up so often
for sure
in my group. And I'm like, guys, stop calling it a date. Like,
stop calling us dating coaches.
Yeah, exactly.
Exactly. Yeah.
Dating is such a charged, horrible word. Because when you think about date, you think of like this, awkward, formal thing that you're gonna do. Versus like if you're just, a cool dude and you show your authenticity through social media, she's gonna want to hang out. Whether that's just like coming over and chilling, or coming to a little party you're hosting, or like grabbing a coffee. Like, yeah, we're just gonna chill. You're not dating.
Yeah. Well, there you go. I'll tell you what, one thing I want to add is kind of the cherry on top of this proverbial sundae is choose your handle wisely. I have guys who come to me and they'll write me from email addresses like stupidshortguy@yahoo.com and complain about why women won't go out with them. And I've seen the worst email addresses. I've seen the most unattractive Twitter names and Instagram handles. On one hand, you don't want to go after John 5672 either, but put some time into coming up with an Instagram handle that reflects your lifestyle and, offers a little bit of intrigue. What I'm thinking as I say this right now, Robbie, is Match.com has long since done away with usernames. They just sort of, encourage you to use your real name nowadays because usernames are no longer unique, right? But mine on Match back in the day was gears and guitars, because I love to play guitar and I love basically motorcycles and bikes, anything with 2 wheels and driving and stuff. And that was, I think, an example of a good one, right? So the plan should be come up with an Instagram username that offers some intrigue instead of killing your mojo. You know, that kind of speaks for itself. But if you have anything you want to comment there, go for it.
Yeah, I think if there's something like witty like that you could put out there, I think that's great. I also don't think it's a terrible idea just to use your name.
Right.
I think a lot of the time when people have kind of a witty name, you forget who that person is. And you can kind of get lost in the shuffle. Like, I know I've gone through my Instagram before and like just purged people that I like didn't know who they were, that I was following. And then later on, I'd get a message from this person, like, let's say their name was like General Awesomeness, which is a lame ass name, but like I'd get a message from
that's an example of what not to do.
Right. And I'd be like, wait, who is this person? Oh, I actually know this guy. And I accidentally unfollowed him because like, you know, his profile picture was like not of his face and I didn't know who the fuck General Awesomeness was. So that's kind of the danger of picking something like that, is people will kind of forget who you are unless it's like super memorable and that good.
You know, I think that's a good take. That's great advice. First of all, Instagram does require a unique username, much like Twitter does. So if your name is John Smith, you're SOL. You know
right.
what I mean? I mean, if your name is like Ezekiel Abramovitz or something, you know, you have a better chance at getting your name as a unique identifier. But perhaps, you know, John Smith Auto Racing, or, you know, John Smith Jazz Guitarist or something like that. Maybe with fewer words, but something that indicates an interest or a level of intrigue with your name attached. That might be the
maybe
perfect
like
storm, right?
Jazzy John Smith or John Jazz Smith, something like that, right?
Sure. Why not? As long as it
right.
actually has some substance behind it. Yeah.
The other thing too is like your bio is a place to add some, you know, some humor and some intrigue there. And if you want to take it a step further, before your actual feed, where you just have like your static photos and videos, you've got those circles where you can post, where you can essentially have highlights, they're called, which are stories that you want to highlight about yourself. So if you've taken a cool trip somewhere, or if you did something like platform speaking, and, you know, you can put that stuff front and center. So when people come to your profile, they get, you know, your pre-selected content, you know, delivered straight to them. So like you can really make a good first impression if you have good content on there. And like I said earlier, it's like, you know, be a content producer, not a content consumer. If you just stick to that, you're not going to go crazy and you're not going to hate Instagram, because it's very easy to feel like you're kind of wasting your life away if you spend too much time on there.
Absolutely. Some practical tips there for you guys to close this thing out. Fantastic stuff. His name is Robbie Kramer. Don't call him a dating coach. We're relationship strategists nowadays, right?
Right.
He is from Inner Confidence. And when you go to mountaintopodcast.com/Kramer, Kramer, you will be teleported to his website. Robbie, what are they going to find there?
You're going to find my podcast. It's called the Inner Confidence Podcast. And if you like what I had to say, check that out. I'm 227 episodes deep. Our episode just launched about making women laugh, which was awesome. So make sure you listen to that one. And, you know, I go deep on this stuff usually twice a week.
Fantastic. Fantastic. Robbie, thank you so much, man. Always a pleasure to have you on. Like I said at the outset, you absolutely know your stuff, and you basically showed up and threw down some fantastic tips and advice today. And you're a man who knows what he's talking about. Thanks again.
Thank you, Scott. Awesome to you know, go back and forth with you as always. I'm glad we did this.
Absolutely. Been a great show. Probably a topic that was long overdue. Matter of fact, for sure, it was a topic that was long overdue. Gentlemen, if you haven't been to mountaintopodcast.com lately, check out our sponsors, Jocko Willink's company, Origin in Maine, Hero Soap, and The Keyport. Please use the coupon code Mountain10 to get 10% off with any order. And that also shows those guys that I sent you to them, which is always a plus. If you have not gotten on my calendar and talked to me for free for 25 minutes about where you are right now and where you want to be with women in your life, now is the time. I can't believe how far we are into the year 2023. Summer is upon us. Meanwhile, a lot of you guys out there still aren't out there meeting women. And if you are, a lot of you guys still aren't meeting the kind of women you really want. Hey, if Robbie and I can do it, you can do it also. Let's get on the phone and strategize. It all starts with a 25-minute call that you can arrange when you click on the big red button at the upper right-hand corner at mountaintoppodcast.com. And until I talk to you again real soon, this is Scott McKay from X&Y Communications in San Antonio, Texas. Be good out there.
The Mountaintop Podcast is produced by X&Y Communications. All rights reserved worldwide. Be sure to visit www.mountaintoppodcast.com for show notes. And while you're there, sign up for the free X&Y Communications newsletter for men. This is Ed Roy Odom speaking for the Mountaintop Podcast.